So we're really excited to have a discussion about some blends today, which I can say for me, NJ and Cindy, we get questions about blends all the time. So we're really excited to have this conversation. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. Huge thank you for joining us today, all of you attendees, and a huge thank you to our panelists. Some of you have heard me talk about Mauricio. Yes, he is a real person. He is also my boss, so say nice things. But Mauricio, if you want to introduce yourself.
Of course. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I want to start by thanking Andi for joining us, for taking time off her busy schedule to be with us and our customers for 1 hour. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Jen, as always, for hosting these webinars. As Jen was saying, my name is Mauricio Jimenez. I am the General Manager of Bulk Coffee Specialty and Genuine Origin. I started my coffee careers 11 years ago, a long time ago, back in Colombia. And since then, I work in different origins. I worked for a few years in Peru. I worked for 3.5 years in Honduras. And I've been in the US managing bulk coffee specialty since 2018. And I took over the role at Genuine Origin 2 years ago as well. So I spend most of my time sourcing coffees, going through samples, chatting with Jen, Cindy, Jay, and Rob, and making sure that I get as much feedback as possible in order to continue buying nice quality coffees and basically getting feedback from our customers and, working through logistics and making sure the coffee is on time so you guys can enjoy it.
That's yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mauricio. Yeah, that's why whenever you order samples and I'm a total pest about getting your feedback as a roaster, that's why. It's because I go back to Mauricio and I say, this is what people are asking for. This is what people want. So that feedback is always, always welcomed. Thank you, Mauricio. And now, Andi, we crossed paths briefly a few years ago when I first started, but it's just been the last few weeks when we've gotten to spend some time together on this. And I'm really excited to hear more of your story and how you got here. And also Philz is a big operation. It's a lot of moving parts and how you manage all of that. So thank you so much for being here. And also, so let's get started. Give us your coffee origin story first.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm actually 27 years in the coffee industry, full-time this year. If you tack on part-time barista work, it's even more. So a long time in the industry. Still, although I'm coming really close on the cutoff, most of my time has been on the importing side. So where you and Rob and Mauricio sit and bringing coffees in from origin and selling them to roasters. But I'm now coming on 7 years with Philz Coffee. And I'll just give a very brief background on Philz so people have context for some of the questions you ask coming forward. But so Philz Coffee is a roaster retail company based in San Francisco for our retail home office, and our roasting operation is in Oakland, California. We have a 50,000 square foot warehouse with 2 ProBot G120 roasters that are side by side. We have a slotted place for when we really grow that we can even put in a 3rd roaster, but it's a pretty modern, big warehouse. So it's a pretty big operation. We roast roughly 3 to 5 million pounds a year, sort of flexed and kind of came down quite a bit during COVID. And we might get to some more questions around that coming up, but it's a pretty big operation. So in my role with Philz is Director of Coffee, Tea, and Sustainability. So I oversee all of coffee and tea sourcing, quality, and anything that has to do with coffee in the company. It's me and the fantastic team I have that people come to us to write descriptions, talk about things, do a demo for Whole Foods, whatever it might be. We do all those types of things to support coffee. And then in sustainability, I have an entirely additional function to help the company drive towards ESG, environmental, social, and governance goals across the company. So through our retail store as well as upstream in our supply chain.
Dang, that is a lot.
I feel busy. I was telling you.
Andy's always finding ways to be busy.
I know. Like Mauricio calls me and I'm like, I'll have to call you later.
I feel like that's, coffee people and their time.
And she has a family.
I do. I didn't talk about them. I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So, and this, by the way, everyone, is my tiny little Zoom room, which was built in my backyard once COVID hit, so that I could actually do all that work without those folks knocking on the door.
Dang.
Or they knock on it, but I can close the door.
Right. Just pretend they're not there. It's fine. A little bit of housekeeping that I almost always forget before we really get into this. If y'all have any questions, please throw them into the Q&A at the bottom. I will try and work them into the conversation. If we don't have time, you can always reach out to me afterward and I will find you the resources or the answers. If you've missed any of these webinars in the past, they are all up on our YouTube channel and there's a lot of really interesting conversations to check in on. So also, I always forget to, I also work in coffee. I have worked in coffee for, it'll be 22 years this year, and judge a few competitions when those are a thing that happen. And I am also the president of the Oregon Coffee Board. So if you're an Oregon-based coffee person, hit me up. But yeah, let's get into this.
I'm so sorry. Can I very quickly say something that's important that I should have put in my bio?
Yes,
I'm also
absolutely.
a very, very proud board member on Food for Farmers. And I've been on that board for almost 4 or 5 years. And I'm a new board member, inaugural board member for the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity. And I'm really excited about that work and the board. And I meant to include those in my bio.
That's awesome. And I want to have more conversations with you about that later. So like I said, we get a lot of questions because we work with a lot of new roasters, some established roasters. It's kind of, we work with a really broad spectrum of people. And so what's so interesting to me, and when Mauricio and I were talking about this, is Philz has a very unique coffee menu and a very unique approach to coffee, which is why we wanted to talk to you. So do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the broad strokes of what the menu and the sourcing is like, and then we'll get more granular?
Yeah, sure. So we are very different from most coffee houses. And I think I forgot to mention we have 60 stores, about 60 right now. First of all, we don't do any espresso drinks. So that makes us very unique from most coffee shops. We strictly do our unique version of a pour over. So, and it is not what you would see, the SCA standards for the exact measurements of coffee to water ratio and all that. We have a special Philz protocol for how we do the pour over. And we have just these stations, and every single cup that a customer orders is made by hand by the barista. And we also uniquely do all the cream and sugar and any other additives that you want behind the bar. So the barista, kind of the theory, the motto of Philz is to deliver the fully completed cup of love to the customer exactly the way they want it. And no judgment either. Like, that's one thing that Philz was doing very early on, was like, hey, if you like cream and sugar in your coffee, great. Thanks for buying our coffee. Here's your coffee with cream and sugar, and no judgment about like you should be drinking it only black or any of those types of things.
I feel like, people will hear me say I have multiple soapboxes that I like to stand on. But that's very specifically one of them. The like snootiness around how you can drink coffee drives me bonkers, because you know what? When I go out for coffee once or twice a week, which is my grand adventure these days, I get cortado sized mochas and I don't want to hear anything about it. So
wait, what? I gotta go. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's it. This is over. But it's like, what makes you happy? Just drink it.
Exactly. More coffee that's drunk, the better. Like, it's better for all of us. So yes. Yeah. And probably the other key piece you wanted to get at, because you teed this up in the beginning too, is we do all blends, which is also against what a lot of people do. And certainly a lot of my background in importing was the highest end micro lots, the most delicious, amazing, uniquely processed and grown stuff.
Yeah, single origins, special processing, all of that.
Yeah, all the great stuff you guys do at Genuine Origin was definitely my kind of importing specialty. And now we are all blends, 100% blends. And that's how Phil started our company. And our founder, Phil Jaber, whose son is our CEO now, created all of the blends himself by hand. There's, all these fun videos of him bean by bean creating the blends. So our job on my team is to keep delivering against the original blend profiles that Phil created. And that's our job. So it's 100% blends. We do have 2 decafs on our menu, and those we do offer as distinct countries of origin. It's a long story.
So that when we were kind of doing our pre-interview for all of this, we talked about our approach to menu, and I think you and I have a similar approach, and a lot of you roasters out there have heard me talk about this. Rather than I have to have this exact estate Guatemala or this specific Sumatra all year round, it's like, what are the general flavor categories you need? And it seems like that's kind of how you work to keep everything consistent.
Yeah, so we have very specific specifications, and the great specificity we have today is a lot of thanks to Judith Mandel, who just left our team to go do a different life. But we have really striven to document very specific taste attributes that we're looking for in our coffees. We have core qualifying attributes for an ingredient, and we also have disqualifying attributes. And while we use an SCA scoring system, score is not how we ultimately decide our coffees. We have minimum scores that we look for, right? But it really is going to be about the qualifying attributes. So we've I've had a great over delivery. I think this was you, Mauricio. Am I right? Of a Sumatra? Was this you?
I am probably
amazing.
always over delivering.
Yeah, exactly.
That was probably me.
He is actually. but no, it was a Sumatra that was delicious. It was amazing. It was one of the best Sumatras I had in many, many years. So it was over 92 or something, which we had not had that kind of cupping score, and we had to reject it, which is crazy because it was not to the spec of what we needed for the coffee. Unfortunately, it's just we are buying for very specific profile, and it has to fit that profile to be in our blends.
It's a really interesting approach because people are always talking about the score, and there are so many ways in which you can reach kind of the same score with completely different attributes. And when you're going to blend the coffee, you need to look for what that specific component is going to do in your blend. Right. So I think they do it really well. Obviously, for us as an importer for Philz, it was challenging in the beginning to adapt to those changes and to start thinking about this is an 83 from Colombia, this is another 83 from Colombia, and going more into the granular data and saying, this is
why is this approved and why is this rejected?
These are the attributes that we have to find in order to be able to get approvals and to make the customer happy. So definitely was a change.
Yeah, and a ton of work, but from our suppliers. We've been very lucky with Mauricio and then Siobhan in the quality lab. It takes partners that are willing to work with us because we really have to calibrate and dial in, because it is strange to be like, it's an 84 Columbia and it tastes, it's got nice attributes, but you're telling us it doesn't work for you. So we really, we came up with a system. Again, this goes to Judith, who really helped us refine it. We attach to in addition to sending cupping notes for everything. And that's a soapbox I have, is like, we always want to get communication cupping notes back to our suppliers. But in addition to the score and all of the attributes, we attach an either TTP, which is true to profile, which means spot on, bullseye, this is exactly what we're looking for. An ATP, which means it's approvable to profile, meaning, hey, there might be something that isn't exactly beautiful and perfect, but it is totally approvable. And then we also have an NTP, which is not to profile. And of course, anything that has defects or anything would additionally have an NTP. But again, the NTP can be very interesting, where you have an 86 and 87, Ethiopia or something, but the fruits are just wrong and they're going to come through in our blends in a way that's just not going to work for us. So it could be, 88, delicious, lovely, amazing, NTP. We can't buy it.
I love love that approach. I'm going to say it right now to everybody that works with us or is thinking about working with us on this chat. Send us those notes. Send us those kinds of feedback, because there is nothing worse than just sending out coffees or samples and never hearing anything, because I can't be better at my job and help you find the right coffees if you don't say, Jen, I hate this coffee. Mm-hmm. It's just so helpful.
Yeah, that was one of my, as I mentioned, was one of my soapboxes as an
right,
because I did over 15 years on the importing side, and it was always like, just tell me what you're getting.
Right?
It's so important.
It doesn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah. And I should let everyone know now, I'm not doing that work for our team at Philz. We have fabulous Taylor Sullivan on our team, has just taken over as green coffee quality manager. She's Q grader, highly skilled, and she's been tasting with us since her time, and she's now the owner of that. So I'm not doing the work to assign those. That's on Taylor, and she does a great job. But she does it. She makes sure those results go out.
How did you handle the transition from, as an importer, we're always looking for that new coffee, for that exciting coffee that is going to please and get interest from so many of our customers.
Yeah.
How did you handle doing that and always trying to promote what is new into like moving into a role where you're trying to get consistency? Because you are always trying to replicate the same profiles, same blends, building those blends so you can continue to satisfy your customer, and your customer who goes there and wants black coffee with a little bit of cream and a little bit of sugar is always finding the same coffee that he loves every day. It's like, how do you manage that change in your role?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a flip-flop, because again, I was working on those super beautiful high-end micro lots and trying to sell those. I mean, I just knew what my job, it's like I knew what my job was. My job was to take these blends and to replicate them, to work with my team to replicate them. But I do think one thing that you mentioned, Mauricio, is I have always felt, regardless of where I have sat on this, the profile of, consistency is the core to quality. Like, you have to be able to deliver consistently. Now, I know that is, if you're buying a small micro lot, that the whole uniqueness of it is that is unique, but everything around that particular thing, everything else needs to be consistent. And that was always a part of my kind of DNA in years I worked. I used to also service equipment way back. Jen, you mentioned that you're in a private chat. So I know that side of it too. And being out in the field on the retail side many years ago, it was all about like dialing the equipment in exactly right to make sure that it produced the most consistent. So that was in my DNA a little bit. So I was able to switch and just go into making that what we do. But again, it's just knowing your job. Sometimes it's just really different. You may not like, just be surprised by what's in your job, but know what you're supposed to do and then do it.
So I know, I don't think we mentioned this yet, but we should. Your recipes are top secret. We will not be sharing any.
We're gonna go there, yeah.
Well, because I want to bring it up, because this has come up a few times in the Q&A. I know you weren't there when the blends were developed, but you work at keeping them consistent. And I would love to hear more about your approach to, this is an agricultural product. There's going to be some variation. How do you specifically get into those blend components and keeping them consistent?
So it's a really interesting background too. I'll try to be brief with it. But when I was first brought on to first build out our first roasting plant and then develop the first green coffee supply chain, what I was handed to do was, here are the blend names. You can go taste them, get to know them. Here are the roasted member origins by name, Guatemala, Colombia, whatever it was. But I was not allowed to know what coffees went into what blends in what percentage for over 3 years. So when we built out, and my team, my first original team, Rob Larson and Chris Weiser, were amazing. The three of us just had to, while building out a roasting plant and managing massive equipment and learning a whole bunch of stuff, we had to deliberately not know what was in the blends because they are so secret that Phil and Jacob would not let us know, even their new head of coffee, what was in them. So it really came about trying to taste those blends, write down as many descriptors as we could, and just really honing in on what those attributes were. But candidly, there were some places where we also felt like this is a little overly burnt or something, and so it was a really, really tricky time, and nobody newer on the team totally understands exactly the massive undertaking that was to try to exactly recreate without having all of the information. And we just built it over time, and it's and it created a nightmare also of accounting. Like only my tiny team knows, our roast master and a couple people on his team get to know what goes into what. Not even my boss, nobody else in the company gets to know. So it's this really massive secret that creates a lot of challenges for us. Honestly, it's difficult, but it's the reason why we still do it, and I do it happily, even with the challenges, or at least willingly, is because it is one of the only things that has ever been on the Phil and Jacob list of, this is really important to us, that this is secret, this is part of what we created and part of what we do. And as I've seen the company grow and scale massively, even just in my coming up on 7 years, so much freedom, so much empowerment to do so much stuff for everybody in the company. They're very great about doing that. So if they say this is some really important thing to them, we're going to honor it. So that's what I've tried to help my team do too. Yeah.
So we're going to go off script a little bit, because there are a few topics that keep popping up in the Q&A.
Cool. And I'm not looking at it, so I've missed them entirely.
That's okay. I've been responding to people, but also the thing that keeps coming up is like, how do you develop a blend? How do you maintain build a signature blend? What do you do with coffee X or coffee Y? And I think my first thing about this is always, what are you trying to achieve and what market are you trying to reach? Because I can't tell you how to blend coffees if you're not sure yet what you want. So both of you have a strong background in this. I'd love to hear if you have things to say about building a blend, or how you would use specific coffees or anything like that. Like, we can always talk about base of centrals, add a little Sumatra, add a little Ethiopia. We can get there, but just as a big concept, what you think.
Yeah, I think your approach is exactly right. Like, what are you trying to create? What is the customer you're trying to please? Sometimes I think with Phil, like, his original blend started with what's delicious to me. He loved coffee, came from a culture where they really enjoyed coffee and a very strongly brewed coffee. So he tried to create a blend that tasted delicious in that method that was great. So he just started with what's delicious and just played around. So there's that. But also then if you're in a cafe or something, who is your customer base? Do they tend to like lighter roast? Do they tend to like darker roasts? Do they add a lot of cream and sugar? If so, then you want to make sure you have enough structure to the blend. Do you do a lot of espresso and that's the bulk of your drinks? Are those espresso mostly with a lot of milk and sugar, or are they just straight up espressos? All of the different variations for how you're going to enjoy the coffee and how your customers are going to enjoy it is where I would start. On another side, though, sometimes you might be creating a blend because you have a lot of coffee that isn't exactly what you wanted it to be as a single origin, or isn't working in some other format, and you might be creating a blend to try to make it better. Like, maybe it's got a little bit of age that's showing on this lot or this coffee, and you need to do something with it. You can no longer sell it as a single origin. Well, could you take that and could you add something to it to mitigate the little bit of age that's on there and to create something that is still really delicious overall?
Yeah, Mauricio, do you have anything you want to add to that? I mean, I think Andi nailed it, but
she did, and obviously I don't have a lot of experience or any experience as a roaster. And my approach is, I'm always thinking about what is the flavor that an origin can bring to the table.
Yeah.
You know, I started working in Colombia, and for 2 years, I was only drinking Colombian coffee, Excelso, Supremos, Huilas, Caucas. And then I moved to Peru, and then you move to Honduras, and you are always, your job as an exporter is always to try to defend your own origin, your own place. The first time that I talked to Andi, I was still in Honduras. And obviously I was trying to sell her Honduran coffee. And when she explained me her process, I was like, I don't know what I can say, but at the end of the day, the most important is that you need to understand Colombian coffee is going to give you balance, sweetness, acidity. This Kenyan coffee can add this Sumatra coffee can add this. And I think when you're trying to build your blend, don't try to take a Colombian coffee and use it as something that is not. So basically respect the origin, respect what the coffee is bringing to the table, because if you are looking for consistency, if you are going to continue buying that coffee over and over again, you need to find the origin profile into that coffee, and you need, in order to be able to replicate it and replace it for another coffee. And then you can try to build your blends, and then you know that you probably can replace some Honduras with some Perus, and you can play with some Guatemalas and some Colombias. Unfortunately, I don't think Ethiopia has a replacement.
Yeah.
That coffee is so unique. But in most cases, it's understanding the origin profile, understanding your consumer, what is the price point that you want to hit, and then you're able to get consistency. And you need to understand that you are not going to be able to find fresh coffee during the entire year.
Yeah,
like most of the customers, they're always asking us, even when they buy 20 containers, it's like, I want 20 containers of Peru delivered every single month of the year, and then they don't understand why in March, April, and May, the quality starts to decay. So it's like, understand what you're looking for in each coffee, try to have some flexibility, think of the attributes, don't be so focused on the origin. You know, you can be super focused on the origin for a single origin or for a special edition, because that is what you are trying to tell your consumer. But for your blends, think of the function, the price, and try to work on some alternatives. So yeah, definitely, I think.
Yeah. And Mauricio, you mentioned one that I didn't mention in the beginning, but it is a big part of what we do, which is really important, is the price. I mean, price matters. Blending, there's an opportunity with blending that you have to create an aggregate price structure that works for your business.
I think I'm also seeing a question come up right now about single origin versus blending and having to change out your menu because coffees sell out. And that's where I might ruffle some feathers here, but coffee is agricultural. There are very few coffees that we see coming in all year round. You know, yes, we have Colombia and Brazil all the time, but beyond that, this is why I get on about having a menu that is kind of categorical. We have our chocolatey, easy comfort coffees. We have floral coffees. We have fruity coffees. Maybe you have something a little more wild and out there, rather than it has to be this exact coffee all the time, because it can't always work. So I think that's why I think about blending both in those categories, but also just think of a menu as a whole.
Well, in that circumstance, we'd be buying the exact same way because you're buying towards a spec and a profile. So I very much understand that. Even if you're selling single origins, you're still buying towards a profile and to an ultimate experience. Yeah.
So I think to further speak to that question that came in, I don't know that blending is the solution to coffees selling out so much as just, yes, it could be the one consistent thing in the menu, but beyond that, it's like, I always think part of the fun in coffee is always having something new. And I think as long as you've got
there has to be a balance, Jen, because that is basically what I saw 2 years ago when we came into Genuine Origin. Like, people were finding those Cubulcos, those Candelarias, some of those that they really like for their blend because they were available almost year round. But we were missing those spectacular coffees that people want to have from time to time. And it's like, it's understanding seasonality, but it's also like, you know, like when you go to a restaurant, you don't want to go to a restaurant where you don't have a clue what you are going to get.
Yeah.
Or, you don't go to those places, or at least I don't go to those places every week. I like to know that I'm going to be happy, that I'm going to leave satisfied. So I would prefer to go to a place that has some blends and some single origin, because not every single day I am feeling like I want to take an adventure with my coffee.
I think that's really well put, and it gets to what you were saying, like probably the ideal menu to me would be like rock solid, steady blends that appeal to different palates. So, and you have like 2 or 3 of those, and then you have like a rotating special single origin that can be just what is delicious. Our coffee buyer found this, and it's delicious and it's amazing, and you highlight it. But because sometimes I'm in the mood for surprise, and sometimes I just want it to taste great, and I want to know it's going to be good.
And you can have a single origin, and that single origin can be spectacular, and you can fail with that coffee because you don't promote it properly. Because people
or
go
it's
to
not
your
what
cafe.
The market wants.
Exactly, like people go to your place because they know that they are going to get consistency. Your baristas are trained to offer that consistency. They are not trained to sell that special edition. And then you think single origins, they don't work for me. They will, but you just have to change the mindset, and you have to educate your consumers a little bit. But as a consumer, I will prefer to go to a place where at least I can find something that I know the name and that I know that I'm going to like it. And maybe 10% of the time I will offer something different.
I think, like specific to coffee, and I've had this conversation with a lot of roasters, I am not your target market, because I will spend more money on coffee and I will buy really weird coffees, but I'm not the general public. I always reference like my parents and my siblings as the target market because they buy the same things most of the time. And so it's also like reconciling that we can't just source coffees for coffee nerds, which again, like speaks to both of what you're saying, that mix of offerings. But let's push on. Let's talk sustainability, which a lot of you have heard me say, like, what does it even mean? What does sustainability mean for Philz and your coffee sourcing? Because somebody brought up like, hey, does that seems kind of in conflict if you're doing these top secret blends? How do you have transparency, or how do you have sustainability?
Fair enough. So we have, while we don't talk about it or promote it because of the secrecy of our blends, and we're not telling our customers exactly what goes into what blends, we have a fully transparent and traceable supply chain. So we know, and I will also tell you, so if a customer calls and tells me, for example, what's in my Jacobs, I want to know which supply chains are in there, which farmers might be contributing to this. I can't do that because that's our blend secret, but I can tell you, hey, I'm buying a lot of now Honduras. Mauricio really did his job there. So I'm buying a lot of Honduras through the Vol Cafe Molinas supply chain, and I can tell you a lot about that. I can't tell you that you're gonna taste that in any particular blend, but I can still tell you all that. So I'm not secret. I don't have to be secretive about how we're buying or what we're buying. So just to put that out there. So that's where for me the conflict is okay, because it's not a conflict. I know, and we can tell you. But then we have a structure to our program. It is really important part of our program. And I would just say the way I call sustainability for our coffee at Philz is responsible sourcing, which is also, well, what does that mean? It's how we've defined it over time. And we actually have a written document. Before I bought any green coffee, I wrote out like a little manifesto. It was probably like 18 pages in the first version of like, here's how we want to buy coffee at Philz. The 3 things we're going to constantly pay attention to, and we're going to deepen what each of this mean for us, are the quality, of course, and the specifications, the social, economic, and environmental conditions in which it's grown, and then price, because my job is going to be to deliver a good profitable coffee. So I wrote out this long thing, and actually Matt Dax, who is now back with Vol Cafe, was one of my first readers of that and gave me a lot of feedback on that's never going to work in this. You can think about that, but that's never going to work. So he was a really great resource. I had other resources like that who read this document and sort of said, yep, you can do that. You can't do that. That's going to be hard. That's what that's going to look like. So and that's something I would encourage to everybody, even if you're buying a tiny bit or not buying. I'm a big fan in like writing out what are your sourcing, what are your sourcing values. And so for us, that does include a lot of things responsible sourcing. So we have minimum environmental criteria, like you can't be using these chemicals or something, right? But most, and some other things. We also want transparency and traceability as far upstream in the supply chain as we can get. And we ask for our import partners to deliver a per lot traceability questionnaire telling us these details. We've worked hard over time to try to simplify that, because one thing that I really don't ever want to be is a burden to our suppliers for the sake of just collecting information that we're not doing anything with, right? So really the crux of our entire responsible sourcing is asking questions about what you're doing. What are you doing? What are you caring about? What are you concerned about? And a lot less judgment. Like, you need to care about this. You need to care about that. It's more just tell us. And really, honestly, if you're caring and thinking about the things that we're caring and thinking about, that's sort of the baseline for what I would call responsible sourcing. I can't guarantee that every single coffee bean that Philz has brought in that every farmer has been paid a living wage every time. We ask a lot of questions around pricing and trends. We ask a lot of questions about environmental stuff, but authentically, all we can do is find the right partners that we know care about the same things, and partners like Philz Cafe, and we have other big ones that we work with too, who have a lot of on the ground programs supporting farmers, technical assistance. The Philz Cafe Way program is really robust and amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So we rely a lot on finding those partners, and then we have a lot of trust in our partnerships. And then I would also say this last year was the first year we did what was a pilot. Now I'm calling it year one within Veritas, which is a third-party verification program that goes on the ground and provides a great data-driven look at environmental, social, and economic conditions in the entire region from where you source coffee. And we had a really great pilot that was actually in Honduras with Molinas, and Mauricio was really key in supporting that project with the Molinas group. And we loved it so much, loved what we got from it. We learned a ton. And of course, yes, there were things that were like, well, I don't feel great about that. But there was a lot we felt really great about. We identified some things we didn't feel great about. We're actually going to put some money into a water project to support water filters for coffee farming families in that community. And we're expanding in Veritas. We're working with 3 additional origins this year to learn about those supply chains. So I guess long story short, it's a lot of learning yeah. First versus dictating, we're only doing this, we're only doing that. I don't want to be disingenuous, but I think we ask good questions, and we're trying to steer our supply chain in the direction where we like the answers we're getting.
What I like about the approach that Philz is taking is that they are not asking for a certification. So they are not telling us everything has to be 100% perfect, because we're talking about supply chains in Uganda, or supply chains in Colombia, in Brazil, in Honduras, in Indonesia, in Papua New Guinea, in so many places where things are not as easy and as organized as in the US. But the approach within Veritas is very interesting, and all the information that Philz is collecting, because they get a really good picture of what is happening with the supply chain. They compare the supply chain with the rest of the country. So you actually know if what you are doing, the intervention, the programs with your agronomists, with Philz Cafe Way, or with whatever other program you have, if they are making a difference compared to the normal situation of a coffee producer in that same origin. And they have the ability to compare those findings also with the region. Like if you are assessing Uganda, you can compare your information with Kenya, with Tanzania, with Ethiopia, with Rwanda, same in Latin America, and with the rest of the world. So you know that step by step, you are doing something better, and you know where you have to focus your resources, because we have to be realistic. We cannot go and build the schools in Honduras and make sure that every single kid is going to graduate all the way through high school, because that is the responsibility of the Honduran government. So we need to find like, okay, our dollars are limited. This is what we can do. This is where we focus our efforts. And this is where we're going to see results in the next 2 or 3 years. And, we just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing until it finally happens. And a question that I had is like, you started with, basically you created the sustainability strategy for Philz, from what I understand. What will be your recommendation for roasters that are starting to think about their sustainability strategy, and they have all these different options? They have certifications, they have private programs like Bulk Cafe Way and the programs that our competitors have. And how do they find that balance where they should feel comfortable and where they feel like they are investing their money in the right place?
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a really tough question. But again, my philosophy is I'm not anti-certification at all. But certification, I also have always had a lot of questions about certification. My feeling is no one system generally works for every community, and you touched base on that, Mauricio, with it's just different. The way things are in Uganda are different from Kenya. Even one neighboring farm in Colombia versus another neighboring region farm has different needs and different issues and problems. So I mean, I personally, but I think it can feel complicated for especially really small roasters, but I'm personally a huge fan of writing your own standards. Set the things that are like minimum, what is really important to you, why? Write it down. Does it need to be organic? Because that's something that really matters to you and to your customer base. And also, of course, think about your customer base. What do they want? What are they asking for? But decide what those critical things are and then work, upstream to get them. But I'm just a fan of start with writing it out. Write your own little manifesto, whether it's, could ideally be less than my original 18 pages and a little more condensed of what you care about in your sourcing. Because Mauricio also said this, you can't care. I mean, you can care about everything. You cannot solve everything. You cannot do it.
Yeah.
So, and every community is different. So even if you believe, the fair trade certification is a really great one, even if you believe that, it's not necessarily the solution that every community needs. Sometimes that's not their issue, what they're solving for. So I think you start with I cannot buy coffee that does this or doesn't do this. Start with that. My customers expect this. I need to meet my customer demands. And then go with a questioning approach. Talk to suppliers. Let them tell you, let your import partners and then the export partners and the farmers you get to meet, let them tell you what they care about. And just kind of go from there. It sounds for some people probably a little too overwhelming to have a more open-minded approach versus just like go out and buy fair trade or go buy rainforest or go buy organic. I just think it's a more realistic approach to the way the world works.
Yeah, I love that. I have in previous jobs, I used to give certain lectures, and a lot of them were around your business should have a mission statement and core values. And I love the idea of wrapping in sourcing values to that too. Because coffee has so much romance around it that people often just jump in with both feet without thinking about all that other stuff. And I love that approach it's about how can we have an impact. So
and you brought up a good point too about the mission and stuff. So I started with Philz mission. From that mission, I created the sourcing value. So I knew it was an alignment because I was allowed to do. One of the wonderful things about Philz is that empowerment to develop the whole sourcing program. But I did very much start with the company mission. You don't want to create something, and that is important, like in your coffee program, that is totally at odds or out of alignment with the rest of the mission of your company. So bring it all together.
Yep. And
I will recommend everyone include your own sustainability. Think about how much you can pay for your coffee in order to grow your business, in order to satisfy your customers. Include that as well. We know you care, we know you want to do the best for the producers, and there are so many different ways in which you can do that.
Yeah. And in just pro tip, your mission statement is not, we have really great coffee. That's what everybody says. You got to dig a little bit deeper. That's all I have to say about it. If you ever want to talk employee engagement and retention, mission statements, core values, I am here for you. We are getting short on time, and we are not going to get to all of the questions. So I want to make sure everybody knows you can find my contact info on the Genuine Origin contact page. If you have questions we didn't get to, or if you have questions that you didn't want to ask in the group, please feel free to email, call, text me. And if I don't have the answers, I'll get you in touch with a resource. So just to address that, I also think the thing I think about a lot is there's a lot of right ways to do coffee. So don't feel like my opinion or Mauricio or Andy's opinions are the end all be all. There's a lot of ways to do coffee right, depending on what you're trying to do. And I would love to keep having these conversations offline with people. But Andi, I know you've also got a really strong educational background. As far as coffee goes, I mean, whatever you consider, but we talked I remember seeing some stuff about SCA and so are there, for newer or roasters who want to grow their education in coffee, are there specific resources or pathways, whether it's classes or books or somebody online, are there resources you would really recommend that newer roasters go to?
Yeah, great question. I didn't know if you were talking about like my college credentials or something.
I mean, you can.
Your Harvard days.
I don't know. Anyways, yes, I am a huge fan, though I'm a little more uncertain where exactly the state of everything is now, because I have not been directly volunteering with the SCA for a number of years now, but for almost 20 years, I did a lot of volunteer work with the Specialty Coffee Association. And I know that when I was involved, and I'm sure it's only gotten way, way better, the educational content there is really excellent. And you have a lot of great people contributing to content that are really hands-on in the industry, like they have hands-on experience and they created the content, and then they now have it packaged up and delivered by people who are also educators, so they know how to deliver that content. So I would definitely say check out where the SCA resources are, depending upon what you're trying to learn. I'm actually a fan of the National Coffee Association educational content availability as well. They have a lot of great science content on a lot of things that are important, especially as you get a little bigger in your volumes, but even smaller volumes, there can be great content there. I know there are a lot of blogs and other resources out there, and I'll have to be honest, between my very busy job, like everybody's, and my two young kids, I have very little time outside of work to keep up on blogs and things like that. So I feel bad, but I'm sure you have a million of them. I know people on my team do, so maybe they'd be willing to re-up a list we had going inside the company to refer people to. But just open up, listen, learn. And suppliers, I mean, honestly, I get so much from our suppliers. So ask questions. All of our suppliers put out amazing, great information on the origin side. I like to read everybody's that's out there, because you also get different perspectives of what one supplier is saying for another, but rely on them. Ask them for information. That's what I would say. Oh, yes. But I will say the CRCE, the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity, is about to launch a webinar series it's going to be fantastic. I haven't been involved in doing anything other than looking at it and going, that's going to be amazing. But it is going to be. So that's one I would just push people to take a look at, because I think right now, while that's off topic to anything we've discussed, but looking at racial equity in the supply chain, both up and downstream, is really important.
Yes. And for anyone curious, yes, I do keep a massive multi-page spreadsheet of resources, depending on what you're interested in. So yes, hit me up for that.
Cool.
You're so many years into your career and so many years into Philz. What would you have done differently as a baby coffee professional? Or what mistakes could you share that you learned from for new people out there?
That's a better question, because there's, for me at least, because there's nothing that I've done that I've made a ton of mistakes, but there's nothing that I regret the path that I took, because I did learn something along every single one of those paths. Even the 9 months I worked for Transfair USA, which was the fair trade organization.
Way back,
way back in the day, because I really cared about social justice issues. And I thought it would be such a brilliant opportunity to merge my passion for coffee with social justice and, be that. It just, for me at the time, it was not enough coffee. So it's the shortest job I've ever had. Made some wonderful friends though, and I learned a ton, but that's not a mistake. That wasn't a wasted 9 months at all. It was a really important one. And it helped me realize I'm not ready to leave coffee. Like, I am coffee. So, but in terms of mistakes, one that did occur to me is not asking for more help and empowering people who work with me faster. I think I've done a lot better job in recent years with Judith, who was assistant buyer and head of quality right before she left, and with Taylor. And I hope I'm doing that with Anderson and Katie, who have just joined our team, of letting them do things. Early on, I feel like I made a mistake even at Philz with, like, Chris Weezer is a really great guy, and he was part of my instrumental first team, super smart, super great, and I didn't let him do enough buying, and I didn't ask for enough help. And I think that's a waste of a resource, because people want to help, and especially when you're so busy, take the help. And I know Mauricio will say she takes the help, because I rely on him all the time. I'm like, okay, you do the spreadsheet of my cost. It's like, take the help where you can get it. So, but I've only learned how to do that more recently. I'm always
happy to do the buying for you.
I know, exactly. It's like, it's okay. I'll just contract that. No, but it is like, that is the biggest one that I have regretted, is not accepting help. And it's still one I have to push, for myself.
I will second that. I think I was a really terrible manager for a while because of that exact reason. Mm-hmm. I did not give people the opportunity. I did not delegate enough, because I was too controlling, that not only could people not learn, but they couldn't screw up and then be better.
Mm-hmm.
So
delegating is very tricky, because you have to make sure that you give your people tasks that are going to make them grow. So don't give them the stupid ones. Don't give them the contracts. Don't give them the silly reports. Give them things that make them grow, that gives them the opportunity to do something that they haven't done before. And even if that means that you have to continue carrying some of the heavy lifting, because otherwise your people are going to be extremely busy, but they are always going to be doing the same.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's another mistake that I definitely feel like I made early on, is that when I did, it's not that I never delegated, but I delegated the wrong things. I wasn't giving them the things that would engage them, inspire them, and help get better, help the whole program get better.
Keeping them busy, but it's like giving them the opportunity to be doing different things and building their skills and learning from the industry. Mm-hmm. I have to work on getting on all those organizations. And honestly, I feel like after 4 years in the US, I still feel a little bit like an outsider in the industry, even though I know a lot of people, but it's like, I was so focused, and I've been so focused on Bulk Cafe Specialty and Genuine Origin, and basically growing the two companies and building our business, that sometimes you need to set aside like 10%, 20% of my time, and I'm going to be, I'm going to volunteer for SCA or NCA. It's like, you always go, but you go with a commercial mindset. It's like, I go to sell coffee, and I see you, in the other hand, you are probably one of the only people that is sitting in every single presentation, taking notes and learning. And I'm like, this is cool.
I'm a huge fan of that. Like, early on in my career, I volunteered so much. I paid my own way to conferences. I paid my own way to Origin. I'm sure all of us have those stories. But it's like, I wanted to learn and be in the room, and I volunteered. I washed cups at the conferences. I just did whatever, because I just wanted to be there. And it's super helpful to just be in the room where people are learning and growing. And then before you know it, you'll be teaching the classes, and then you create this incredible network too. Yep. Yeah. That's the other thing about getting involved. You create this amazing network of people that you can call. And I do that all the time. I still have an incredible network of people that I call randomly, like, what kind of equipment are you using for this? You know, it's such a valuable thing. So yeah, many thanks to all my friends. And most of them I met originally through volunteering.
Yeah, I went first time I went to Symposium or RICO, whatever you know it as, was because I got a fellowship, because it was so expensive that it wasn't going to get paid for by work. So how do I get myself there? So this,
find your own opportunities, and ask people to invite you to events, ask people to have a meeting with you. Don't wait for people to reach out. When I went to my first SCA, I was basically waiting. I was in Oregon and I was waiting for Bold Cafe Specialty to kind of like organize my agenda. It didn't happen.
No.
I had like 5 meetings during the 3 days, and then the second SCA is like, oh no, now this is serious. And I had like 50 meetings. I was running from one place to the next one to meet somebody else, to try to talk about coffee, to try to like go to an Ethiopian coffee. And it's like, these are the opportunities where you really have to take advantage of the opportunity of being there when you're starting your coffee career. So you are the one who has to build experience and basically have to make sure that it's worth it, and that you're spending the money for a good reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know the three of us, and I especially know Mauricio and I could easily talk for another 2 hours.
Do you know I have to go do another webinar too? The timing is crazy. So yes,
we can keep on talking for another hour.
So Rob, who is in the background, is going to put up an exit poll for us. And really, I think there's so much more we could talk about. And please know, if you're out there and you have more questions, I'm not kidding. Call me, email me, text me. This is what we exist for. Yes, we want to sell you coffee. We also want to be a resource. We want to help you along your coffee adventure. And Andi, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much for asking me. I feel very honored, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm a huge fan of Mauricio, though usually I give him a hard time. So I would pretty much.
Yes, you were on good behavior today.
I was on very good behavior.
Yes, for the questions that have come up and the comments that have come up, we have a lot planned for this year that is going to be these kind of educational roundtables. There's a lot of topics we're talking about behind the scenes, but if there's something that you in particular are interested in learning about, or you think you would benefit from one of these conversations, send it my way and I'll add it to the list. Rob and Mauricio and I talk a lot about this stuff and what people want and what's going to be helpful. So we are open to your ideas as well. I promise I'm getting back to Instagram cupping soon. And there's so many cool coffees on the way. Please check the Afloat page. Please check the new arrivals page. There's a lot that we're excited about, which generally means you're going to hear me talk a lot about them.